Good afternoon. It's my pleasure on behalf of this board to call this meeting to order and to welcome each of you present. We will have our roll call now. I've been informed that Mr. McLaughlin is on standby by phone.
Yes, sir.
Got you, Melvin? Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, next order of business is to stand for our invocation and pledge, please.
Let's pray. Father, we thank you this evening for your many blessings upon us. We thank you once again for the privilege and honor we have of assembling together as a community and conducting the business of this community. We thank you for this community. We praise you, Father, for the richest blessings that you bestow upon us each and every day. We pray that you might guide and direct us this evening as we deliberate the issues. Help us to make those decisions that is best for the citizens that we represent. These blessings we pray in your holy name. Amen.
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 Please remain standing and face our flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Manager, I believe you requested that the presentation be moved up on the agenda to after item 5.
Yes, sir.
And there's a request for an addition to the agenda. Mr. Webb, you want to speak to that?
Mr. Chairman, it's been brought to me by a local teacher who's done a lot of research on Charles Montgomery Epps, CM Epps, who we know the school is named for historical marker to be placed. And it just needs a letter of support from the board. I'm okay with it being on decision, but if everybody's okay with it being on consent, that would be fine too. It's just a letter of support from the board to the DOT supporting one of the historical markers to
You have
be
to have
placed.
that, so, yes.
What?
Okay with consent?
Yes.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
yes,
All right.
yes.
Consensus?
Thank
All
you.
right. Any other additions or corrections to the agenda?
Move approval with the
All right,
adjustments.
let's vote. Did that get us?
No, don't look like it.
Raise your right hand, maybe that'll do it. Thank you. No opposition to that, all right.
These are really cute.
Mr. Manager, next.
Okay, next we're going to handle item number 7 on the agenda. This is a presentation to recognize the 13 and under Babe Ruth baseball team. Mr. Chairman, if you would like to join me down front, we can.
Okay.
Motion be approved.
Clerk will join us too to help us pass out the materials.
We need a vote on that, Scott.
They look like to me, y'all.
This,
We can ask the boys to come forward and the
do we need to vote on those?
coaches. Yes, please.
Okay, I make a motion.
I second.
All in
All in
favor?
favor?
Just make a semicircle here.
Unanimous.
Boy, sure
Did
consensus.
he be coach today?
No coaches here tonight?
Wow.
Okay,
Okay.
okay. Any stand-ins for a coach? Any parent or?
That's good.
What's this?
That's the only kind of
Need you
coach
to be
I
a coach
could
next
ever
year,
be.
next season.
Is this a soccer or the,
Mr. Chairman, would you like me to read the
Please.
prepared
is this?
resolution?
Baseball.
Public seat. So it is entitled
turn
Pitt County Board of
those-
Commissioners Resolution of Recognition honoring the 13 and under Babe Ruth All-Star Baseball Team. Whereas the 13 and under Babe Ruth All-Star Team played baseball with remarkable success and dignity as representatives of Pitt County, the state of North Carolina, and the Southeast region. And whereas through their regional victory, the members of the 13 and under Babe Ruth All-Star Team earned the right to represent the Southeast region in the 2018 Babe Ruth Baseball World Series in Mountain Home, Arkansas. And whereas the outstanding performance, courteous behaviors, and positive attitudes exhibited by the players, managers, coaches, and families of the 13 and under Babe Ruth All-Star Baseball Team during this prestigious tournament reflected immensely well on Pitt County and the state of North Carolina. The 2018 13 and under Babe Ruth All-Star players are Chase Anderson, Tyler Bonds, Elijah Bonner, Owen Boyd, JoJo Byrne, Colby Case, Cash Daniels Moy, Connor Edwards, Perry Eveleth, Cameron Greenway, Jaden Grimes, Ives Howard, Mitch Jones, Campbell Seymour, and Josh Widener. The coaches is Mo Blackwell as the Mo Blackwell is a manager, Hunter Cannon as coach, and Lanier Eveleth as a coach, and Aaron Clark as a coach. Now therefore, be resolved that the Pitt County Board of Commissioners does hereby recognize the outstanding achievements of the 13 and under Babe Ruth All-Star Team and congratulates the players, manager, coaches, and families for their accomplishments at the 2018 Babe Ruth World Series. This is adopted the 15th day of October 2018 by the Pitt County Board of Commissioners. It's signed by our chairman, Mark W. Owens, and attested by our clerk, Kimberly Hines. Mr. Chairman?
Who, you say you the boss? Congratulations, son.
Yeah. We also have certificates for each player, and the clerk is going to help me pass these out. Each one looks like this. Come on up, you're just in time.
Right here.
Certificate of recognition is awarded to Chase Anderson for participating as a player in the 2018 Babe Ruth Baseball World Series presented by the Pitt County Board of Commissioners on this 15th day of October 2018, signed by our chairman, Mark W. Owens, Jr. Chase? Next. Mr. Chairman, do you want to pass these? Or? Okay. Same recognition to Tyler Bonds. Elijah Bonner. Owen Boyd. Jojo Byron. Byrne. Okay. Next we have Colby Chase. Not here? Okay. Pass on back. Okay. Connor Edwards. Okay. Ives Howard. Mitch Jones. And Campbell Seymour. We also have extra copies of the resolution to present to the coaches for the, we have a couple more? Okay, certificates for the coaches. We'll go ahead and name these again. Aaron Clark, coach. Lanier Eveleth as coach. The last one should be the manager, I believe. No, I'm sorry, Hunter Cannon as a coach. And then we have one for the manager. Yes, Mo Blackwell as manager. So if you'll pass those on.
I do.
Yes, sir.
We appreciate the contributions of the manager, the coaches, and particularly the young men that participated in this. It's quite an honor for those of us that serve on boards to have you to come in and show us what your mindsets are, what your abilities are, and you take this training that you receive from here, and it'll be a great foundation for you to build upon. Did all of you collectively hit as many home runs as Babe Ruth did in his highest year? Y'all remember what he's renowned for, how many home runs he hit in one year?
They don't let him.
The year that Babe Ruth hit the most home runs while he was playing, how many did he hit?
63, 64.
Is that right? I don't know either. I appreciate y'all.
You could have been right, boy. Okay.
Sure.
Hold your heads up, boys.
Marky, look about it, huh?
Look at the cameras, boys.
Good job, boy. Boy.
Open your certificate so they can.
Not a boy, T-Bird.
Now you're ready. Thank you again.
Congratulations.
As I said momentarily out there, it's always an honor to have people to come and let the public of Pitt County, taxpayers of Pitt County, and the parents and the coaches and managers that give up their time and effort to set forth a standard for young men to participate in, and this is a living example of what that is. Mr. Manager, what's next?
Next, you have 3 public hearings, and if Eric Ruby will come up and introduce the first one.
Thank you, sir. The first public hearing we have tonight is a comprehensive land use plan amendment, and this is really in preparation for the Southwest Bypass Plan public hearing that will come after this. The request is to amend Section 4 amendments in the 2030 Comprehensive Land Use Plan. That's to clarify the mailed notice requirements regarding public hearings for amendments to the future land use map. With the Southwest Bypass Plan, we're going to be asking you to amend the map, but it includes a large amount of area and would have been a large number of people we would have had to mail notice to satisfy that. So again, the CLUP requires a first-class mailed notice to owners of all properties whose land use classification is changed, as well as all property owners within 100 feet of the affected property. Again, the intent for this amendment language in the land use plan was really to affect just a handful or probably even just one parcel when it was done in conjunction with a rezoning request that may not have been consistent with the plan. For large studies such as the Southwest Bypass Plan, again, it includes thousands of parcels, and the cost for postage would have been cost prohibitive for the county. It would have been probably close to about $1,000 just in postage alone for that one project. So the proposed amendment will require additional published notice and will increase the distance for those cases where we do have a mail notice. It will increase it to 500 feet, which is consistent with our rezoning mail notice requirement. So language in the land use plan will say, with respect to map amendments, we'll add that it have been requested in conjunction with the rezoning application that will provide first-class mail notice of the public hearing. And again, also we're increasing that 100 feet to 500 feet to make it more consistent with our rezonings. And then also adding a stipulation that map amendments that result from a supplemental planning study, such as a small area plan, highway corridor plan, et cetera, shall not be subject to the mail notice requirements of this section. Public notice for such amendment shall be published once a week for 3 successive weeks in a newspaper having general circulation within the county, as well as on the Pitt County website. And the notice shall be published the first time no more than 25 days prior to the scheduled public hearing date. And so for this amendment that we have coming up, we did go ahead and follow the published requirements that we're proposing. So we've already met that requirement. So with that, Mr. Chair, we'd like to recommend approval of the proposed amendments with an immediate effective date, and we'd like to open the public hearing.
All right, that having been said, I declare the public hearing open. Mr. Manager, do we have anyone signed up to speak today?
No, sir. Nobody signed up on that item. Unless there's somebody who'd like to come forward.
Is there someone in the audience that did not sign up desires to speak to that issue? If not, then I declare the public hearing closed. What's the pleasure of the board?
Motion to
Motion to
approve.
approve.
I'll second it.
All right, any discussion? All in favor indicate by raising your right hand.
I think they said this thing is working now.
Raise your right hand and hold this.
All right, next.
It did it.
Mary, why are you trying to run the meeting?
So did you know.
All right, let's vote lower for Mary's sake.
There we go, see?
Jimmy, Ann, Beth, now we go. Thank you. All right, next, Mr. Manager.
Unanimous.
Next, we have a public hearing on the Southwest Bypass Land Use Plan Amendment.
Yes, sir. This has been a long time coming. This is a project we've been working on for about 11 months now. We've presented this board several times, providing updates. So tonight we're holding the public hearing for this board to consider adoption of this plan. We also have Cindy Schwarzkopf. She is the planning practice leader with Stewart, who is our consulting firm, and she'll be up to present part of this with our policy recommendations for the plan. I'd just like to go through a couple things just to remind the board. Again, this was about an 11-month project. We kicked off back in November of 2017. We had a steering committee that met 6 times. We've had a couple public meetings. We had 2 in April and June. Those were held at Pitt Community College. And then from December on until October, we've been drafting the plan, and we think we have a excellent product to present to you tonight. Public involvement, as we mentioned to the board before, we've had numerous opportunities for the public to get involved and to provide input on the plan. We had stakeholder interviews back in November of 2017. We've had the 2 meetings at PCC that I mentioned, and we also had an online survey that was available through March and April of this year. That survey, we got over 344 responses, and that also includes approximately 60 people at each of those public meetings. So a lot of really good public input in this project. The draft vision of the plan is to provide a coordinated approach to land use, road, infrastructure, schools, and utilities in the area surrounding the bypass, to create a well-designed, cohesive development that strengthens existing communities, balances new employment, commercial and residential areas with agricultural and open space preservation. And again, coordinated. This has been a collaborative effort. We've worked extensively with the City of Greenville, with the towns of Ayden and Winterville, as well as NCDOT and the Greenville Urban Area MPO. So we've been a very in-depth approach to this project with a lot of people involved in it. Just with the future land use map, again, this does provide some economic development opportunities, what you see, and we'll, Cindy, and her, as part of her presentation, will kind of get a little more in depth with it. But the main thing you see that we told you before, from the public input that we received, they really wanted to preserve the agricultural feel of this area, particularly west of the bypass, and that's what this future land use map shows. It also allows for new residential growth areas, as well as some new development types such as mixed use and T&D, which is traditional neighborhood development, as well as some conservation design. And so, Mr. Chair, with that, I'd like to introduce Cindy, and she's going to walk through the policy recommendations for this plan.
Yes, sir.
Hey, good evening. Cindy Schwarzkopf with Stewart. I'm happy to be here this evening to kind of wrap up this process. As Eric said, it's been about a year process that we've been working with Pitt County and the member municipalities, and from a consultant perspective, working with the staff and the community for this has been great. So I'm excited to be able to finally reveal some things to you. Eric did a great introduction talking about where we are and talking about our public engagement. And now I'd just like to take a few minutes and talk about some of our key recommendations. One of the opportunities that we're having with the bypass being constructed is the opportunity to provide a mixed use at many new intersections and the interchanges to be constructed. We're showing areas for large-scale commercial. We're really looking to limit strip development. We're wanting to put standards forth for attractive gateways into the community. And looking at this area, this map shows some of the areas that we've targeted through working with our steering committee and stakeholders in the community, doing land use suitability analysis also to determine the best areas for some of these. So the areas that you see in brown are areas that are being targeted for mixed use development potential in the future, and areas in red would be best suited for commercial development. And then we're showing a few small areas of some neighborhood commercial development around some of the interchange locations. Also, you know, we all know that with the bypass coming through, it's absolutely going to be an economic generator. You'll have lots of people that are looking to locate businesses in the area. So as part of this plan, we wanted to identify areas that would be appropriate for that development. And this map shows future land use that's been identified for industrial type uses as well as office and institutional. We think it's really important to go ahead and designate those areas now, because those are the key areas where you'll be able to have that economic development for the generation of employment for industrial and office, and discourage large-scale residential uses in those appropriate areas for economic development reasons. Also want to make sure that as part of this, we're talking about aesthetics. When you have this roadway coming through, you want to make sure that you have regulations that are strong against billboards. And we know that Pitt County already has very significant billboard regulations, but we're thinking of some opportunities to strengthen some of those. We want to look at options to be able to improve buffers, to be able to buffer from the roadway as well as some of the higher intense uses that are being promoted. And also making sure that, you know, we're being very, very sensitive to light pollution, especially for areas along the southern portion of the project for the Time for Science. We worked with them a lot in the stakeholder meetings, and they came to our public meetings, and we want to be sensitive to their needs for nighttime. All throughout the process, we've heard, and Eric mentioned also, that retaining the agricultural heritage of the county is very important. So we are only going to encourage very low density residential in certain areas, and looking at this map, all of the area in the green to the west of the bypass is being designated for residential uses and agricultural uses, and then also retaining the Renston Historic District. And as we move forward, one of the recommendations is to do some updates to the zoning code, and perhaps making sure for that Renston Historic District that we are putting forth some regulations for density design and types of uses that would be appropriate in that area. And then quality residential growth. There's different types of growth that would be appropriate, different types of residential uses that would be appropriate along different portions of the bypass. This shows the difference from working on our suitability analysis and working with our stakeholders. This is what has been derived as the best places for development. The yellow would be more of your low-density residential. The medium-density residential is more focused in the Winterville area. And one of the things that came out as part of this also is that there is a need to address recreation and open space. So wanting to coordinate with schools and other entities to locate park sites in the Winterville area, perhaps working to add different open space standards for residential districts that will be planned. And then tying the Southwest Bypass Plan to Greenway plans so that they mesh together, so that the recommendations that we have here also work with the different municipalities as they're updating their Greenway plans. And then for infrastructure analysis, working with our consultants on this project and for DOT, understanding that there may be additional analysis that's needed in certain areas in the study area, the US 13 Davenport Farm Road area and the NC 102 interchange area, concerns that there might be an additional turn lane needed, the NC 11 and Fire Tower Road intersection, thinking things about some intersection modifications there to handle new traffic, and then perhaps along Stantonsburg Road intersections at 11. Other future analysis things, that's one of the recommendations that will be brought forth in this plan. And then utilities also, there's a need to update some of the interlocal agreements just to factor in economic development. We know that the Utilities Commission hasn't been able to plan for future growth. Now that we're able to show where these locations are best targeted for economic development, now working with utilities to be able to plan for infrastructure to support those. And then just briefly talking on some of the key implementation steps that for you to consider, adopting the land use plan and then be able to consider that for rezonings as you're moving forward with development in the area. Updating the local land use regulations and zoning districts to be consistent with this plan. Improving standards for visual buffering along the bypass, enhancing those landscape standards and buffer requirements. Improving standards for new residential development. And then again, establishing urban service areas for some of those water and sewer and utility concerns. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Eric to talk about the final recommendations.
So just a couple key points. We have had 2 endorsements, particularly from the steering committee as well as the planning board. The steering committee met on August 16th. They were the ones that have sort of guided the development of this plan through this whole process. And they unanimously voted to endorse and recommend adoption of the plan. The planning board held its own public hearing last month at their meeting on the 19th. And following that, they also voted unanimously to recommend adoption of the plan, as well as amending the future land use map. And as you can see the map on the screen, there are some gray areas that you see that are shown on there. Those are the areas that fall within the municipalities. And so the areas that really that the county will control through this land use plan are those areas that are outside those green shaded areas. The municipalities being partners, they have the option to adopt these standards or to adopt these policies or to incorporate them into their own land use planning processes. I know Winterville and Ayden are getting ready to adopt their land use plan. I expect that they'll probably roll a lot of these recommendations into their plans as well. So I just wanted to point that out to you. So tonight we do have a resolution for the board's consideration. That resolution would authorize the chairman to sign the resolution to adopt the Southwest Bypass Land Use Plan effective immediately, as well as to amend the area of the Southwest Bypass as shown on the future land use map in the 2030 Pitt County Comprehensive Land Use Plan to refer to the Southwest Bypass Land Use Plan for all future development requests. And with that, Mr. Chair, we'd like to open up for the public hearing.
Thank you, sir. Having heard that presentation, I declare the public hearing open. Mr. Manager, do we have anyone signed up for that?
No, sir.
Again, we offer an opportunity to you, if anyone present that wants to speak to that presentation. Having none available at this time, I declare the public hearing closed. What's the pleasure of the board?
May I ask one question, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Our reference 44, their reference page 15, they use a term with neighborhood commercial use on the future land use map. And there's a term I've never come across before, in an area that's context sensitive. What exactly is that?
That means that it would depend on the type of use that they're proposing in there. So, and whether it would sort of mesh with the surrounding area. So the context of the area is what would be considered in terms of what type of use would be allowed in there.
And that's
So
a real word, context?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks. Learn something every day.
That satisfy you, Mr. Fowler?
Yes, it sure does.
All right. Page 7 of your agenda, the 1 and 2 requests for approval. What's the pleasure of the board?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, ready to vote? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Okay, Mr. Manager.
Next, you have a public hearing in the authorizing resolution for the Pitt Area Transit System for their fiscal year 1920 CTP program, which is the Community Transportation Program. Cam Coburn's going to come up and present this. This is actually an application for the next fiscal year that begins July 1 of 2019, but it's a process the county is required to go through early in the budget process.
Good afternoon.
Hey.
Night.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. So as the manager just shared with you, this is an annual application for funding for administrative and also for capital. And at this time, Pitt Area Transit is seeking approval to apply for $182,303 in administrative funding, which would require a local match by the board, approval of $32,171 for a total of $214,474. Also, we are seeking $112,995 through the State Rural Capital Program, and that would require a 10% local match approved by the board of $12,555 to total $125,550. This will bring the total combined request to $340,024 with a local match total of $44,726, and that will the capital portion will be in the next fiscal cycle to replace 2 transit vehicles that are scheduled and eligible to be replaced. A couple of successes I just want to share with the board. Over the past couple of fiscal cycles, we've seen very proud to say we've seen a 15% trip increase between fiscal year 17 and 18, which equates to just under 6,000 trips. Collectively, over the last 3 fiscal cycles, we have experienced between 22 and 23% trip growth. Last year, we doubled our goals for first-time riders. We're in target for this fiscal cycle to replace 65% of our fleet with newer vehicles. We've also purchased new software to meet the demands of this growth that we are having, and also with grant monies that you all approved last year, we have replaced all of our radio systems through the capital grant funding and gotten onto the county radio system. We've also participated in numerous events to promote Pitt Area Transit System, and we've provided support, much needed support for 2 major disaster events with emergency management in our EOC with evacuations, special medical needs, and the moving of supplies and meals for our folks that have served in the storm. The one I'm most proud of is that our recent compliance review, which is a triennial review typically conducted every 3 years, reviewed for the first time no findings or deficiencies from the consultant group hired by the North Carolina Department of Transportation and the FTA. And so we're one of a very few systems in the state that has accomplished this, so we're very proud. We're also partnering with new agencies and subscription routes, particularly most recently Pitt Community College students with disabilities, and we are in talks with Pitt Community College with some of the retention monies that they are looking at obtaining in the future on how we can better serve some of the rural students outside the urban areas and helping to keep them in school. Most importantly to you all, we also are providing increased revenues. So with that, if there are no questions, I'd like to open up or ask for a recommendation to open public hearing.
All right, having heard the presentation, I declare the public hearing open. Mr. Manager, anyone request to speak to this issue?
Again, no.
Reopen that if there's anyone likes to speak at this time. If not, I declare the public hearing closed. What's the pleasure of the board about this application?
Motion to approve.
I second it.
All right, let's vote. Thank you, sir.
Can I just say one thing, Mr. Chairman, before you sit
Yes, Ms.
down?
Ward.
I think we've had, I won't use the word remarkable, but a great turnaround and a quiet, slow, moving, methodical, planning, thinking, going after some money with this, our Pitt Transit, because it's not an easy department, but I think we are getting where we hoped we would be when we first started this. Thank you for that.
I think it's worthy to note that before CAM came on, we had ran a deficit in the PAT system as kind of an enterprise fund as such. And since these came on, we're actually been in the black, and we're actually making a profit, I guess, adding to a fund balance. So that's much credit to CAM and his leadership.
Thank you.
Anything else, Beth?
That was it.
Thank you, Cam. All right, Mr. Manager, do we have any requests for public address to the board?
Nobody's signed up.
Anyone now desire to speak as to the public address portion of this meeting? If not, let's move on to the items for report.
Okay, first item is a report from PGV, the Pitt-Greenville Airport. We have Betty Stansberry and I believe John Banks, Vice Chairman of the PGV Board, Airport Authority Board.
You wrote it, I didn't.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to come visit with you. I'm going to spend about 10 minutes giving you an update on the airport, some of the projects and challenges ahead of us, and then also tell you a little bit about what our plans for the future are. But first, I thought I would tell you a little bit about the economic impact of the airport. North Carolina State University just released new numbers on the impact of the airport. Has an annual impact of $273 million. That's up from 2 years ago, almost double what it was 2 years ago. It has 400 direct jobs and about 1,200 indirect jobs, and it generates taxes of about $9 million for the community. We have 70 based aircraft with a value of about $40 million at the airport. Some of the businesses with based aircraft include Grady White Boats, High Stu Yale NACO, Four Sons, Greenville Toyota, Overton's FAC. We had about 104,000 airline passengers last year. So we believe that the airport is contributing to the economic vitality of the community. We had about 48,000 aircraft operations last year, which makes us busier than the other nearby airports of Jacksonville, Fayetteville, New Bern, Kinston. We're significantly busier than those. And we get aircraft in from all over the country every day. An example of that, in the past 24 hours, we have had aircraft arriving from Melbourne, Palm Beach, and Marco Island, Florida, from Columbia and Charleston, South Carolina, from Baltimore, and Essex, Virginia. The Essex flight was what we call an angel flight, where pilots donate the aircraft and their time to fly in critically ill patients for treatment here. The patient today was a woman in her mid-50s who is here for her second round of month-long cancer treatments. So, again, we have aircraft arriving at the airport every day from all across the U.S. And some of the significant events in the last 12 months, our primary runway was 25 years old and needed to be replaced, so that was a $10 million project. We got 90% of that was funded with federal funds, almost 4% with state funds, and the remaining little over 6% with local funds. It took us 22 days to do a 7,000-foot runway. We had over 80 people, 60 pieces of equipment, and we stayed operational for that entire time with the exception of one 5-day period where we were doing the intersection of the two runways. We're pleased to tell you that in the spring, jet service returned to PGV, and over the summer, American Airlines was testing a 5th daily departure. That test was successful, and that is now a permanent 5th daily departure. And in February, they will be upgrading the equipment. They're currently using 50-seat aircraft, and in February, they'll be upgrading to 70 and 90-seat aircraft. We also recently formed a long-term partnership with Pitt Community College to provide facilities for their basic law enforcement training program. That is training not only for PCC students, but also for city and county law enforcement and fire department personnel that need recurrent training. And the next class will be next month. Last month, during Hurricane Florence, we were pleased to be able to provide a staging facility for air ambulance medical support teams. We had about 150 doctors and nurses and support crew based at the airport, living with us at the airport for several days while they were providing initial support to the hurricane areas. Some of the projects that we are doing right now, we're doing tall tree removal on both ends of our primary runway. And then later this fall and over the winter, we will be doing tree clearing in the approach to our secondary runway, clearing out a swamp area along the Char River. Some of the future projects that we have coming up, in the spring, we're hoping to do an extension of our North Corporate Taxi Lane and site preparation in preparation for some private hangar development in a vacant piece of land along Memorial. And then we're also hoping sometime in the next couple of years to replace our fire truck. Our general aviation ramp, we're hoping to do a $3 million repair of that ramp next summer. And then our 45-year-old secondary runway needs a replacement, and we're hoping to do that in 2020. Again, these are all projects that are eligible for federal funding at a 90% federal share. Okay, some of the challenges ahead of us. The slide that you see in front of you is called a pavement condition index. It's done by the State Department of Transportation. Green is good, yellow is fair, pink, red, and burgundy are poor. So 2 years ago, 80% of our pavements at the airport were in need of repair. We've gotten the first 2 of the 6 projects completed. We have 4 more to go, and we hope to have them done over the next 5 years. One of our other challenges is aircraft storage. We are 100% full in all of our hangars. We have additional aircraft that would like to base it at PGV, but we currently do not have storage options for them. And for the high-end aircraft that are in the multi-million-dollar aircraft, they prefer to have their aircraft in storage under cover. So that's one of the challenges we're facing. The operational deficit, the airport has not generated sufficient revenues to cover its operating expenses for 8 of the last 10 years. The average loss has been about $128,000 per year. We right now, I apologize, there's a typo there. Our reserves right now are 2.8 million, not 2.6 in reserves, but those reserves are used primarily for the 10% match on the federal funds, but we have been drawing down some of those reserves to cover the operational deficit. In the next coming years, what we will be focusing on, again, completing the 4 remaining pavement projects and other infrastructure development, some very modest improvements that will allow for hangar development, reaching an operational break-even point, diversifying our revenue sources so we are not so dependent on airline revenues, and then we would like to partner with the county and the city on development of the 90 acres that are adjacent to the airport property. We would also like to make one specific ask of you this evening. In the last legislative session, the legislature set aside some funding for the 10 commercial service airports. This is money tax money from the general fund, but it is generated by on-airport rent car transactions. The legislature set aside some funds for that. This next session, we're going to ask them to make that permanent, and we would like your support in asking our legislators for their assistance in making that permanent. Again, it's from on-airport rent car transactions. There is no harm to the city or the county revenues. At the current level is $75 million. The recommended level is $125 million. And if that is approved, we would get somewhere between $377,000 to $1.7 million, depending on the formula they use and what the funding level is. And we could use that money for our matching share on our federal grants. If the funding level is at $500,000 a year, that would be almost enough to pay our 10% match on our projects over the next 5 years. If it's funded at the higher level, at the $1.7 million, not only could we do the match on our federal grants, but it would also give us some money to start addressing some deferred maintenance and some equipment. Things like we have our 2 snowplows are 32 years old and they need to be replaced. The fuel storage tanks that you see in the picture are 26 years old. Our fuel trucks are 21 years old. So if we get it funded at the higher level, that would allow us to begin to address some of the equipment and the deferred maintenance. So that's our ask of you tonight, is if you would see fit to be supportive of that during the next session. And I think, any questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I would like to proceed and make a motion that we incorporate into our legislative goals, that we add this as one of our legislative goals, that we support this proposal for this additional funding from our legislators. We need that at the airport to support the financial viability of the airport. And if we can do this and increase those funds, it will eventually reduce the financial responsibility that we at the county and the city will have in order to support the airport to keep its viability. So I'd like to just go on and make a motion that we add that to our list of legislative goals.
I second it.
All right, any discussion on that motion? Not, let's vote. Now we go back to questions. Is there any questions from the presentation of the airport?
Thank you.
If not, appreciate it. Sounds like John's doing all right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, John.
John's doing great, and one of my last tasks before I leave this board is to make a motion that he be permanently assigned to the airport authority.
Without pay.
I don't think my wife would appreciate that.
Thank you, ma'am, and thank you, John.
We'll talk to her.
All right, Mr. Davis. Thank y'all.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thanks for having me here. Just going to be real brief about what's coming up with the election. The registration deadline, since we were one of the 28 counties affected by the hurricane, was extended until today at 5 o'clock. I guess that's a good thing because we had hundreds of registrations come in at the very end, like we usually do. Those last few days they come in. So we actually have all the staff at the office right now keying in registrations. Over the course of this year, just like we always see, registrations increased by about 3,500. But we do have coming up in January our biannual list maintenance, where voters who have been in an inactive status for 2 federal elections will be removed. And an inactive status is a voter we've mailed 2 voter cards to, and they've both come back undeliverable. They're put in an inactive status for those 2 federal elections to give them time to contact us. So we do have that coming up. So where our number is at almost 125,000 now, in a few months that's going to drop once those voters are removed from the rolls per the statute. Absentee requests, we have a lot of those coming in. We actually have 175 more absentee ballots sent out this year than we did in 2014. However, you can send out ballots, we're pretty much even with what's been returned with 2010 and 2014. So people will get their ballots, but then do nothing with it. But the deadline to request an absentee ballot is 5 o'clock, October 30th, and that's a hard deadline. Has to be in our office, can't be postmarked like the registrations, has to be inside our office. One Stop, we're actually going to be setting up tomorrow for the opening on Wednesday. We have an extra day of One Stop. Starting on the 17th, that's going to run through November 3rd. Due to the new law, we're going to have 5 sites. During the week, it's open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. All sites have to be open the same hours. We're going to be open 2 Saturdays. The first 2 Saturdays, 9 to 1, and the last Saturday, we open at 8 to 1, and one Sunday, October 28th, from 1 to 5. So that's the Ag Center, County Office right here at Pat's, Community Schools, the Willis Building, and Winterville Fire Station. And if anybody missed the registration deadline today, they actually, just during One Stop, not on Election Day, they can register and vote. It's what's called same-day registration, but they do need to bring an acceptable form of ID, something that has their current name and address on it, driver's license, utility bill, bank statement, what have you. Election Day is going to be November 6th. Like it usually is, 6:30 in the morning to 7:30 at night. We have 40 precincts that'll be open. And we usually have all the results in and get them out onto our website or to the state board website roughly about 9:30 usually is when our last one comes in. And then canvass, when everything's made official, because election night is unofficial, that's going to be November 16th at 11 o'clock. So that's when everything will be wrapped up. And if anybody has any questions about if they're registered, where do they go vote, who do they go vote, or where do they go vote, who can they vote for, they can go to the State Board of Elections webpage and look themselves up. They can also, there's a link on our page, pittcountync.gov/voting. Pretty easy to remember and has all the links there and information for here in Pitt County about our polling places. Like I said, I just wanted to be brief, give you all an update on where we're at right now. Does anybody have any questions?
That's the kind of report I like, Mr. Davis, but I think on top of that, we should all encourage everybody to vote.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if the board has any further response, let me know. If not, we thank you, sir.
All right, thank you all.
All right, next, Mr. Manager.
Next, we have the monthly financial report from Brian Barnett.
Mr. Chairman, Board, you have in front of you the monthly report ending on September 30th. It's our first quarter of the year. I'm pleased to announce that our expenses are below the 25% mark. So we are exactly where we want to be within the fiscal year.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, let's vote. Thank you. Appreciate you. All right, next.
Next, we have our September 2018 tax collection report from our tax administrator, Sam Crum.
Mr. Chairman, Board, it's good to be with you tonight. The Pitt County combined collection rate for real and personal property taxes for 2018-19 is 63.69%. This time last year, it was 63.91%. We continue to pursue all outstanding taxes using necessary enforcement remedies available through the North Carolina general statutes.
Do we have a motion?
I move for
Motion to approve.
Ready to vote? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Elliott.
Okay, next we have the manager's report, and on that, the next meeting dates for the month of November will be the first and third Monday, November 5th and 19th at 9 a.m. for the first meeting and 6 p.m. for the second meeting. Item B was on the agenda in the last meeting, but I failed to mention that right prior to Hurricane Florence, we had walked on an item called the NCDOT Disaster-Related Debris Recovery Agreement, basically an agreement that allows Pitt County the option to clear vegetative debris from the secondary roads that are state maintained. And the agreement that was presented to us by DOT was actually a 5-year agreement. When we actually came to the execution of looking at getting DOT to approve it once you approved it, they wanted to change that to a 1-year agreement and just go year to year. So I just want to clarify that in the midst of the Hurricane Florence, we as, I think, through my signature, signed the 1-year agreement, and we'll renew that each year. The important thing to note is that with Hurricane Florence, we did not have to exercise that agreement. Actually, what the agreement calls for, when an event comes, a hurricane where there's vegetative debris, we have to tell DOT what specific NCDOT roads and secondary roads that we would like to clear, give them the road name, the secondary road number, then they have to agree to it. But we never got to that point, thank goodness, because just didn't have that much debris per se. So I just wanted to just enter that for the minutes, that it's not a 5-year, but a 1-year agreement.
Okay.
Item C, Economic Development Working Committee structure. This is a follow-up from your last meeting, and have a handout for you on this. As a follow-up to the discussion concerning this, have worked with the group that's been working on the concept of this, and we've come up with a proposed structure for the working committee, and I'll let this go around. So basically, we're talking about 14 members, and this is titled Proposed Working Committee Structure for the Proposed Pitt County Economic Development Alliance. The entities to be represented as proposed would be Pitt County with 2 seats, City of Greenville with 2 seats, Committee of 100 with 2 seats, and Development Commission with 2 seats. And then in terms of others, the investor reps, we'd have 3, PCC 1, ECU 1, Vidant Health 1, again for a total of 14. Other non-voting ex officio members would be myself as county manager, the city managers and mayors of the various municipalities throughout Pitt County, the Committee of 100 chair, Development Commission director, the Chambers of Commerce in Pitt County, and GUC. Facilitator, we're proposing to continue to use Creative Economic Development Consulting. That's Crystal Morphus, who facilitated your workshop on economic development. We came up with a list of tasks, and all this was the brainchild of myself, Wanda Uhas, Ann Wall from the city, and Spence Cosby with the Committee 100. Came up with this entire document, I guess, is our brainchild per se. The working committee task 1 would be to review and recommend governance structure and bylaws. 2, review and recommend public financing funding structure. 3, review and recommend the organizational chart or the staff structure. And 3, complete reviews and make recommendation by January 31st of 2019. Put a note on the bottom that the focus would be proposed to be focused on economic development services of the organization would be on industrial, commercial, small business, and entrepreneurial activities. These were the things that we heard back from the different entities and input feedback, especially among the municipalities for the commercial and small business. Entrepreneurial is one of the activities the Development Commission is highly engaged in right now. Industrial is what we normally do. Commercial would be a new activity that we don't currently do, and we have heard from the municipalities that the smaller municipalities in particular are interested in commercial as a focus. So under this, each entity at the top would name their own people to be on this, and we would need 2 interested county commissioners to serve as the Pitt County seat representatives.
Is this just a way of a discussion tonight from asking this of the board, or do you want to, having been presented this tonight, put it back on for a decision item, or what's the board's feeling?
Could we just ask a question or two?
Sure,
because
sure.
I think we could move on with it tonight. Under the entities, this will be kind of the governing body.
Well, again, it's just a working committee.
Well, I meant working committee to do these recommendations and tasks at the bottom. So when you say Pitt County, those 2 seats will come from?
I was anticipating from the Board of Commissioners. Now, you could appoint somebody outside the board, but I think it would be, in my opinion, fruitful for you to have somebody who's on this board that will make a final decision as to whether you go down this road or not.
Right. Well, one of the things I was looking at under the entities were the at least 1 representative from one of our towns in Pitt County. I mean, I think we talked about that a little bit when we were, discussing this when they went around to talk about the group. I mean, because most of our towns or cities or whatever we want to call them that are within the county have development commissioners or half-time development people, not commissioners or whatever. And I know that we, as a development commission, the Pitt County Development Commission, have worked very closely with those towns of all sizes. So somehow I would like for at least 1 person that works with development in one of our smaller towns to be in this group.
Well, Winterville comes to mind. I mean, they have
Yeah,
a,
and, Farmville, Aden, it doesn't matter, Aden has
Farmville,
got
Aden,
that
and Winterville
industrial
probably
park
have
out there,
it.
I'm not trying to think of one, I'm just saying I think we should have it down here. Could we have 15 people in here?
You could, and you're the first group that has seen this and has responded to it because you were the one who proposed doing the working committee. So,
Right.
I mean, it would put an odd number, which you normally have on a group rather than even, so.
Well,
you had
14
one-
is even.
Yeah, so if you added one more, if you added one small town representative, then you'd be up to 15.
Or say municipality.
Other-
We've already got Greenville, so.
Other municipality,
yes.
other than Greenville.
So
Right.
what's the significance, Scott, of having an odd number, if I may butt in? I mean, this is only making a suggestion. If you have 15 and 8 vote for it and 7 against it, that does not say that's the way it's going to be, right?
True.
So it really doesn't matter how many you have on there.
So this is just for the committee that will bring us back what the structure would look like. This is not a committee that votes on what the final structure would look like.
Right.
This board and the cities
Right.
and everyone mentioned would have their own votes on whether or not they wanted to participate. And for the working committee, wouldn't the other municipalities other than Greenville fall under the ex officio members, the city managers and mayors?
Correct, as laid out.
Right, but those are ex officio, so they wouldn't really be voting on the plan.
Sure, but I mean, if we're.
That's all I
if-
was
if
saying,
we're
was just
representing them, I
one,
mean, we would take
just
their
one more
input.
representative, and I don't think it matters whether it's even or odd. And if no one else feels like that should be there, I don't,
Well, you can get boards that are too big, too.
yeah. But like you said, this is a planning group to kind of come up with the framework, right?
Correct.
As
So-
Scott said, this is just a first viewing of this by any of the groups, and you've got other groups that's gonna do the same thing about the structure of the working committee.
And all I'm saying is I'd like for us as a group to include one of our townships, or whatever we want to call them.
Mr. Chairman.
I don't care which
I
one.
agree with Beth because so many times the smaller municipalities feel like they are left out or overlooked. And I think it is important that we incorporate them because we want this to be a county economic development program.
What's the pleasure of the board from here?
Do I need to make a motion that it be included, or can we just get a consensus?
I think you can get a consensus, and if the board, to move the project along, if the board's willing to name the 2 county representatives, then it might help stir action on the others to name theirs, if you're in a position to do that tonight. If not, we'll bring it back on the November meeting, first meeting in November, first Monday.
Does the board want to do that at this time?
Well, if they're going to have recommendations by January the 31st, better be thinking about doing it soon.
So you want me to make a motion for 2 people?
Well, if that's what the board wants.
Yeah, I
Mr.
think we
Chairman?
should.
Okay, I would move that we have Beth and Tom.
Depends on when you have the meetings.
Huh?
Depends on when you have the meetings. I am really strapped.
We got a motion made, and who's the second that?
Second.
All right, let's vote. Tom's out.
I need an answer to my question. When,
I don't think
They're
they- I don't
proposed
think
for
they
like
know.
3 o'clock in the afternoon. Would that work for you? 3 o'clock in the afternoon on 3 or 4
Three or
dates?
four.
Like 3 to 5, I believe, 3 to 6.
We need you.
He said, all right.
We need you, Tom.
Yes.
Okay, what else on that?
Was it a consensus that we add 1?
Yes, that was my understanding. We'd add the one more municipality as representing a smaller municipality. So it'd be a total of 15 then.
Just by way of argument, if you got how many small municipalities around there? Are you just gonna say have one from Aden or one from Bethel or one
They
from?
big.
Well, we've got,
Let them choose or what? The committee doesn't understand. I don't, maybe the committee would.
So then the question becomes, who chooses that
Yeah.
smaller municipality?
The
One
mayor's
that's
group
less
gets together
developed.
monthly, don't they? They could hash it out there.
I think
That
that
makes
would
some
be a good
sense.
idea to maybe ask them to get a representative, because we have some municipalities that have some very active
But that takes care
development.
of that, I believe. Let's move on next.
One other item, did want to, just to announce, it was in the paper today, that a mobile disaster recovery center regarding Hurricane Florence has been designated in Pitt County in 2 different locations, in the town of Grifton, town of Grimesland, and this will be open Monday, beginning today, the 15th, through October the 17th, from 9 to 3 p.m., and also the week of October 22nd through 24th, from 9 to 3 as well. And that's for people needing assistance following Hurricane Florence. You can either visit the center or register for federal assistance and find out information. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right, do we have a motion for?
I move for acceptance of the consent agenda.
All right, ready to vote? Thank you. Now, number 11.
Number 11, you have a report on Hurricane Florence on the FEMA employee compensation. And this follows 2 years ago when we brought before you the report on Hurricane Matthew regarding the personnel ordinance right now states that employees, as they work overtime, will receive comp time unless you decide to alter that practice. And what you've done in the past is, based upon a FEMA designation, both under a state of emergency is declared by the governor of the state, and also a state of emergency is declared by Pitt County itself, the county would then become eligible for FEMA reimbursement. So Brian's got a report for you on this regarding Hurricane Florence that we experienced.
So, Mr. Chairman and Board, my report tonight basically takes our overtime costs from Hurricane Florence. I just want to be clear that working the event, the way FEMA looks at it as if the event occurs during your normal 40-day period, they're only going to look to reimburse us for any time that is considered overtime. So this is a report of the overtime hours and dollar amounts that occurred during Florence. And what I've done is I've broken it out into 2 periods. I have the prep work, the actual event, and then the post-event. That's in period 1. And then period 2, primarily this is our event involving social services where they set up disaster food stamp facilities across the county. So in period 1, our total cost of overtime, we were looking at about 7,580 hours at $212,000. In period 2, we looked at 4,071 hours at $102,000. And over the entire event of Hurricane Florence, we're looking at 11,651 hours at $314,965. We are anticipating we're going to put all our best efforts out to FEMA. In period 1, we are going to try to recover all $212,000. In period 2, once you move into disaster food stamps, that is not FEMA eligible. However, the food stamps program through the state of North Carolina, through our Department of Social Services, will reimburse us for half the cost, which will take the $102,913 down to $51,456. And we just learned today that the governor is going to propose legislation that could potentially pick up the remaining 50% of the disaster food stamp cost. So we're looking at worst case, just the remaining half of the disaster food stamps, the $51,456. If that legislation does not go through, the county would be on the hook for. But we are going to make every effort possible to seek as much reimbursement as we can for these overtime costs.
If I can add, Brian said this, but I want to restate it, that when Hurricane Florence became an issue for us payroll-wise, we had just begun basically a new payroll period. So what FEMA said, or says, that even though that this first 40 hours, all of our employees, we may have been working the EOC, we may have been working shelters, until you clock 40 hours, they make the county pay for that. So we were in the EOC, we were in shelters, we were all over the place, sheriff's deputies, out on the road. Once we got to the 40-hour clock, then we could start clocking the overtime hours. But the county had to pick up that first 40 as part of the normal pay that we'd be paying our employees. They don't allow us to get reimbursed for 100% per se.
Correct.
What are you looking for, Mr. Manager?
Approval, well, basically, we would need to, we're asking you to approve the Hurricane Florence overtime costs as an exception to the personnel ordinance, because your ordinance basically says that you would only give comp hours versus being paid.
What's the pleasure of the board?
So you're asking us to treat this the same way we've treated these
In the
incidences
past.
in the
In
past? right?
Hurricane
Okay.
Matthew, that's correct.
I
Move
would move
approval.
that.
Second.
Made and second. Any discussion? Not, let's vote. Thank you. Okay, next.
And next, you have Brian Barnett with the discussion on the banking services request for proposals to give you an update as to where we are through this long, tedious process.
Overworking him tonight, huh?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
We have
So,
a handout for you, too.
So back on June 6th, we sent out the proposals for banking services. The deadline was July 27th. My staff and I have gone through all 7 that we received. At this point in time, we did not specifically put this in the RFP, but we would like to, with your consensus, move forward with the 2 that you have highlighted. We'd like for them to come in and present to us directly because it's very easy to put on paper what you're going to provide, but I want my folks to actually see it and touch it if we are going to look to switch. So at this point in time, out of the 7, we'd like to bring in Wells Fargo and BB&T as essentially they would present to my staff and also to the management team so that we could actually see the product in action.
We would then bring back a formal recommendation to you as a board to make the final decision.
Sounds good. Do they need permission?
So you need what tonight?
Just for you, the consensus for us to go to the next step in the process.
Go proceed and continue
yeah.
on?
Yes, sir.
Oh,
All
yeah.
right. Is that satisfied with the board?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Next.
Why change?
Okay, next, you have a public health presentation regarding public health nurses. The Public Health Board met and is asking for an exemption from the 30-day hiring freeze. I think we have Dr. Morrow and Dr. Hardy here.
Scott, I would like to go a step further than that, too, before Dr. Marr speaks. One of the things that they have is that basically it ends up being about 12 weeks. And what the proposal here does only shaves about 4 weeks off. What I'm saying is that if we go this route, critical positions that earn money, more money than they cost, why don't we, as soon as we know somebody, let's say, is going to retire, if we know they're going to retire, then 8 weeks prior to them retiring, they can go ahead and start the interviewing for that position to be filled. Because it's typically that when they finally decide after that 4-week period, it takes that long to hire, then the people that are leaving want 4 weeks to be able to give to their current employers before they come to us. So why waste all this time? Why can't we do something a little bit different than what you got proposed here, but literally move it ahead of the time? It doesn't cost the county any more money and allows them to get the positions filled immediately upon the exit of the other person. So with that in mind, if you would, just listen to what he has to say and
Consider what
give
you
him more
say.
time to work with. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Colson. Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for your time this evening. We'll try to be brief. We've had this discussion with the Board of Health for some time now, and I'm going to let our chief nurse, Dr. Kimberly Hardy, show you some information that she has. She's the one that's really been in the trenches with this. As everyone knows, nurses are hard to recruit today. We're competing with hospital, medical school, trying to get nurses to come to a public health department. And it's not just any nurse that can be a public health nurse, so that's another issue. But the other issue, I think, is both the services that we're providing, but also the cost, the revenues that we're missing out on, because a lot of these positions actually bring in more revenue than they cost us to pay them. So every day that we don't have that nurse, it's costing this county money, as well as the provision of services. So Without further delaying your time, I'd like to introduce Dr. Kimberly
Dr.
Hart.
Marlowe, along what Mr. Colson was talking about,
Yes,
you
sir.
have people that leave or retire that doesn't give you that period of pre-notice that Tom talked about all the time. Does this person fall in that?
No. The person we have retiring, they've already notified us that they're retiring.
I guess
Is
my
that what
question,
you're
how
asking?
long have you known that they were going to retire?
About a month, going close to a month now.
So Tom's suggestion wouldn't help you in this situation, would it?
Well, it would help us in terms of going ahead and bringing somebody on board that will learn those skills before that person leaves.
Okay.
But I think we're talking about, that would be even further in terms of a cost structure. I think we're talking about just exempting them from the positions that actually earn revenue above and beyond what the position costs, to exempt the 30-day freeze on that, not necessarily bringing them in to double pay a position and double count them. I thought that was, but I'll let y'all present.
Does the board have a sufficient information from what the presentation has been yet to make a motion to permit this?
Well, if the statement is factual that we are losing money
That's
by
what
not
did me,
doing
Jim.
this, then if that's a fact, then I'm ready to make a motion, we do it.
Yeah.
All
that
right,
the
you making
facts?
your motion?
Yes.
I second it.
Now, any discussion on that?
I just want to
Tom?
say
Beth?
one thing is if there was some way that we could, if someone knows they're planning to retire or move or whatever, if we could say somehow, I don't know, when we hire them, that if this happens, give us a wide enough notice so you'll have more time to recruit, maybe? Is that something that you're asking for, kind of?
No, I think we have the time to.
Okay, that's fine. That was, I
Recruit.
just,
The freeze
I
has
think I
been
was
the
kind
issue
of
for.
hearing that, and I seconded your motion, and I'm
Okay,
ready to
well,
vote.
Then I would like to say something. But Dr. Morrow, I don't necessarily follow this. What I'm suggesting will get you people faster than what this does. And it sounds to me like you're throwing that out with the baby out with the bathwater.
I hope I'm not.
Well,
Because
that's
what we want is to get people fast as possible.
And the other thing too is, how many positions do you have open in your department right now?
Total, I think it's 16.
16. How many
and
people,
7
how
of those
many
are nurses.
positions do you have total?
About 135.
Okay, so you got more than 10% that's out. What is your average percentage that's out?
Lately, it's been about
Ever
10
since
to
I've been on
15.
there, it's been way over 10%.
Yeah.
Ever since I've been on there, it's over 10%. So going and saying, hey, we got double billing here, it doesn't make sense from that standpoint, because you're not filling all these positions to begin with. So at the end of the year, you hadn't spent all the money for wages anyway.
Correct.
And so what we're doing is we're playing games here and potentially shortchanging critical positions that we could be getting in here. And even if you only get 4 weeks' notice from them that they're going to retire, why can't you right then, that day, push a button and start recruiting people?
Sure.
Right then. And then that way is if they have 4 weeks, you'll get somebody in 4 weeks after it. But if you know about it beforehand, if you know it as much as 8 weeks ahead of time, or 12 weeks ahead of time, that somebody's going to retire, and you do that on occasions, right?
Yes, yes.
So if we
therefore-
release the 30-day freeze, is what you're saying?
I want to get rid of the 30-day freeze, and I want to be able to give Dr. Morrow and his unfortunate future replacement, sorry to see you go.
That's not going to happen.
Yeah, well, are we going to flatten his tire so he can't
Yeah,
leave?
something.
All right, there's been a request for the motion to be restated.
Okay, and the motion is, as is stated on page 71, that we remove the hiring freeze for public health nursing vacancies.
All right, so now who made that second?
Mr. Garrett, that are
I did.
revenue producing? That are revenue producing, yes. Isn't that what you want, Dr. Morrow? That are revenue producing?
No, he wants all of them.
It's all of them.
Yes.
In terms, now, I'm telling you, some of them, you can look at their salaries and say, they're producing more revenue today than they're costing today.
Yeah.
But all of them produce revenue in terms of providing our services. So,
Well, some produce revenue, though, that cover their cost to produce the service. I guess my concern would be DSS is probably going to want to come up next and ask that their positions also
I
be.
see her smiling.
And the only reason I bring this up is because we rely upon the lapsed salaries to fall back to be that plug of the $3 million that we plug that we budget, but it's not real money. It's kind of, I hate to use the word funny money, but it's money that we expect not to be spent so that the money falls back into fund balance by June 30th.
and I would say, Scott, that the public health nurses' services are too critical to be depending on those lapsed salaries. Because every time you lapse that salary, you hurt this county's health.
And I can say for
services.
DSS, for
Sometimes
Child
more.
Protective Services and Adult Protective Services, Jan Elliott would probably argue the same argument.
All right, do you know where you were ready to vote or not? Motion been made and
Scott,
seconded.
is this a
We're gonna
motion
have to do it for both.
that I just made, which is consistent with what's on page 71, and Beth seconded,
We
is
can
that
work-
appropriate?
We can work with that.
Okay, fine. My motion stands.
Okay.
All right,
Well, you can work with it, Scott, but I'm just saying that this is not the best thing to do for the health department. If you did what I said, I'm gonna vote against, I have to vote against it just out of principle, because I think either I didn't explain myself very well, or you're missing an opportunity here.
anything else, Tom?
No.
All right. All right, everybody vote.
Let's just give him what he asked.
Okay. That's good. Next.
Thank you.
Next, under items for decision, the interlocal agreements for the Candlewick Sewer Project, we have James Rhodes.
Yes, sir, Mr. Rhodes.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. You may recall we had our closeout public hearing for the Candlewick project about a month ago. We're still not quite there as far as wrapping all the loose ends up. We do have some amendments now that are warranted for our two interlocal agreements. Remember, we have a tri-party agreement between the county, Candlewick Sanitary District, as well as Greenville Utilities in one agreement, and then another agreement between Candlewick Sanitary District and the county. Did just want to remind you this project is about $3 million. We did put in some match funds for some of the connections out there that were above income. And again, we've got a reduced service area now, but all the improvements are in. This is your pump station that has been constructed and is upsized to accommodate additional expansions in the future. This is a picture just of one of the connections to one of the homes. We've already had our grant rep on site. We are completed with our final monitoring visit and passed it. So all the homes are now connected to the new system. Few wrap-up items as far as getting the streets in final order for DOT to release the encroachment agreement, but we're real close to that now. So what do the amendments do? Number one, they account for the reduced service area that's been part of this project. And it also increased the available Greenville Utilities contribution to the upsize of the project. That's a good thing. The second bullet is also for the transfer of all assets to Greenville Utilities once this is completed. You may recall at one point we thought that Candlewick Sanitary District would actually handle the operation and maintenance within the district itself. That is not the case now. Everything's going to Greenville Utilities, and the bill of sale for that is actually included as part of that first agreement. So where are we? Candlewick Sanitary District has already approved both of these agreements at a meeting last Thursday. We're considering it tonight, Greenville Utilities later this week, and after that, we'll be finalizing all the work, and we'll with all intents and purposes, get the payment from Greenville Utilities that fills in the gap that is for the upsize of the project itself. And then finally, we'll enact or execute the bill of sale that transfers all the assets to Greenville Utilities. So with that, 2 motions tonight, both for the amendments to the tri-party agreement and then to the agreement between Candlewick and Pitt County.
James, is it fair to say that the county's costs on this, we will be within budget and not over budget?
Sure.
Okay. Just want to bring that point to the board so they understand.
I'll be back if that's not the case.
Any questions from James from the board?
Good thing you got your 30.
Thank you, Mr. Garris.
All right, what's the board's
Motion to approve.
Second it.
in discussion? Thank you. Next.
Thank you.
Next is a budget amendment and position request. We have, I believe, Kent Keeter or Dr. Morrow. Kent's going to present this, okay?
Mosquitoes are eating us up.
Good evening. My name is Kent Keeter. I'm the on-site wastewater supervisor for Pitt County Environmental Health, and I'm here just to kind of give you an update on the numbers that we have as far as on-site wastewater permitting with Pitt County, and to ask for an additional position to help with these numbers. As you can see, in 2007, on-site wastewater, we were doing about 712 on-site wastewater activities. In 2017, at that time, we hired 2 new positions because of our wait time and lag. We experienced a decrease in economic situation, and by 2011, we had lost those 2 positions, and those were one was a retirement and the position was not filled, and the other was a voluntary person leaving Pitt County to go work elsewhere, and that position was not renewed. Starting 2012, we picked up the swimming pool program in addition to our other responsibilities, and we also picked up a well program before that. As you can see, since that date, we have been trending higher and higher with our activities, and we're to the point now where we are exceeding the total activities with a total of 5 staff members than we were when we had 7 staff members back in 2007. And in the past few quarters, you can see that part of what we do are the on-site wastewater evaluations. Those numbers per quarter have been trending upward very quickly. And as you can see, back in the 3rd quarter of 2016, we were doing 99 to 124. We're double that now. We're doing 230, 228, and it doesn't show any signs of slowing down. Development is booming. Subdivisions are being proposed daily. We see people coming in with projects, and what's happening is, and this is a chart of wait times that kind of. These are wait times to first contact. This is not finishing a project. This is when we can actually just give them a phone call to say, hey, we can get out there. And right now we're telling people in our office 6 to 8 weeks for new lot evaluations. Repairs we prioritize. We'll get to those first. We can usually get those a lot quicker. And we triage things as they come in to try to help with wait times. But for new projects, before we can even just talk to them. It's trending up towards 5 days now before we can even give people an idea of when we could set an appointment. And as you can see, that is correlating very, very much so with the increase in numbers that we're seeing. And just as a, in the past 12 months, we've done 923 on-site activities. I'm going to back up. And you can see that's well over what we were doing in 2007 at the height of the last economic boom. So I'm just here to ask for help because my guys are working as hard as they can, and the wait times continue to go up, and we're just trying to get kind of a position back to where we were back in 2007. Any questions?
Tom, does that fall into what you would,
Well, on this, I'd like to see something else about it. Yes, it does. We really need to have somebody in there to do this. There's got to be a lot of builders out there and a lot of frustrated people can't build a home or can't progress with their homes because these guys are maxed out. But beyond that, I want you to look at the salary, $39,652. Now, we typically, as a county, measure ourselves against other like counties. The problem is that these type of positions are very significant in that they're training sensitive. It takes them a year or longer to literally be able to operate on our own once you hire them. Now, we're not just competing against our like counties. We're competing against every county in North Carolina. Every one, Mecklenburg, Wake, everybody. And I don't know what their pay scale is for an individual that does this same work. But, you know, I heard that some of them are offering bonuses to move to their counties. And so I think that we need to also look, maybe at another time, but we need to look at the pay scale. $39,652 in today's dollars is not a lot of money. And so it needs to go up. Otherwise, you may end up having nobody here. And then what are you going to do?
Commissioner Colson, we did do a salary survey comparing us to, I believe, our comparable jurisdictions. I think Environmental Health put that together. And our entry-level pay is higher than all of the others, as I recall. And also want to bring up the point, it's not the same, Mike is saying?
6 months.
Yeah, that is 6 months' salary.
6 months'
because
salary.
That's not the full 12 months, because we're only doing 6 months of the remainder of the year. But also, even besides that, we did do a salary survey, as I recall, and we're paying higher than the other counties we compared ourselves to. Another point for Dr. Barrow and his staff is that they have the ability to offer higher than the beginning. They can go up to increment 9 as department head. If they feel justified, they can come to me as manager and say, hey, I've got this person, they've got experience between increment 1 to 40. I want to offer increment 15 or whatever the scenario might be. And that does occur in instances.
So you're telling me that environmental health specialist makes $78,000 a year, is that correct?
Well, you're including all the benefits.
I don't.
The total, you know.
But benefits don't spend in the grocery store. I go up to the grocery.
Yeah, but if they have to pay for insurance, it won't spend either.
Yeah, I understand.
So
I think it's 43,000.
that's what's called a benefit.
well, the short and long on this request here is that they are not in a position to serve the public for permits that are gonna make money for the county.
And we need to do it.
So,
I move
make a
approval.
motion that we approve this new position request.
Yeah,
I second it, and
now is the end of discussion.
just when budget time comes back, this will be there to be added to
All right, let's
the other
vote.
positions.
Thank you, sir. Next.
Thank you.
Next, you have appointment to the Fire District Commission. Your recommendation that Russell Lyle Harris be appointed to serve in seat number 5.
What's the board's
I
pleasure?
say
move
move.
approval. Oh, second.
In discussion? Not, let's vote. All right, next.
And then you have
Mr. Chair, motion to approve this one. The appointments for the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council.
Second.
Okay,
All right.
so there you have.
What's Melvin's problem? I couldn't hear.
He said he motioned to approve it.
All
I
right,
second
thank
it.
you, thank you,
Because he
Melvin.
serves
Glad
on
you're
this.
still awake.
I second it.
All right, let's vote. Okay, reappointment to the Board of Health.
Whoever.
Your recommendation for Dr. Marquez to be reappointed.
I say move.
All
Second.
right, ready to vote? Thank you. Any further business?
Well, we need.
If not,
Is
we'll
it time to
start
close?
on the right over here with Ann for commission comments.
Yes, I'd just like to say that I was asked to write a letter in support of the Epps historical marker also, and to announce that I will be bringing greetings to the North Carolina Association of Senior Citizen Clubs conference, state conference that will be meeting here October 24th through the 26th.
Very good. Mr. Gass?
No comment.
Sean?
Oh, yes, I just want to mention, it was very good to hear Dave Davis say he will be updating our voter rolls. Thank you.
Lynn? Beth?
No.
Mary? Tom?
No.
You have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All vote?
Oh.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.